take a moment and really listen to your intuition, because the energy showing up in this reading feels very special. Someone has been thinking about you far more than they've ever admitted. They're looking back at everything from a completely different perspective, and they're beginning to realize that this connection has impacted their life much more deeply than they once thought. And what's interesting is, what confuses them isn't how they feel. It's the fact that they can no longer keep pushing those feelings aside. They see your growth. They see the way you've continued moving forward. They see how you've stayed true to yourself. And it's making them wonder whether they may have overlooked something that truly mattered. A shift is happening within this person. New realizations are surfacing. New truths are coming into focus. And there are feelings here that they don't seem as willing to hide anymore. It feels like they're learning how to listen to their heart instead of letting fear make every decision for them. So keep an open mind. Take what genuinely resonates with you and leave the rest behind. Because this reading carries the energy of awakening, honesty, and a new chapter that seems to be slowly unfolding. Okay, let's take a look at your reading. A very powerful energy is showing up right from the first cards. The Judgment card comes through like a moment of awakening after a long period of living with questions that never seem to have clear answers. And honestly, this doesn't feel like a change that's happening on the outside. It feels like something unfolding deep within someone's heart. A slow realization, a profound realization, a truth they've tried to overlook more than once, but one that has become impossible to ignore. This person seems to be looking back on their journey from a completely different perspective. There were things they once dismissed as coincidence, people they thought would simply pass through their life, feelings they tried to explain away with logic. But the further they've traveled down their own path, the more they've realized that some connections aren't so easily forgotten. And what's interesting is, this shift didn't happen overnight. It was built through countless small moments collected over time, quiet moments, memories of old conversations, unexpected reminders that somehow brought you back into their mind. Times when life should have kept moving as usual, yet their heart kept drifting in the same direction. The Hermit card carries the feeling that this person has spent far more time alone with their thoughts than anyone realizes. On the surface, they may appear calm, rational, focused, or busy with their own life. But beneath that exterior, they've been reflecting deeply, trying to understand what really happened, trying to understand why they still remember, why your presence continues to linger in their mind even after time has passed, and why this feels so different from anything they've experienced before. The more they sit with these thoughts, the more they realize the question isn't whether this connection exists. It has existed for quite some time. What they're trying to understand is why it carries so much meaning. The Star card brings in such a beautiful energy here. It feels like reaching the end of a long, exhausting stretch of road and finally seeing a light in the distance. Not the light of perfection, not the light of promises, just hope. Hope that some things in life are still real. Hope that certain people enter our lives not to take something away from us, but to help us understand ourselves more clearly. And I feel like that's how this person is beginning to see you. Not just someone they have feelings for, not just someone they find attractive, but someone who has unknowingly helped them see themselves differently. Because ever since meeting you, some of their old beliefs have started to shift. Some walls they thought would stand forever have begun to crack. Some fears they once accepted as normal suddenly seem impossible to ignore. They're asking questions they never wanted to ask before. And you know, sometimes awakening doesn't arrive as an answer. Sometimes it arrives as a new question. The Ace of Cups card appears like water finally finding its natural path. Emotions they once tried to control are becoming harder to push away. They're no longer just thinking about what happened. They're starting to feel it. And honestly, that may be the part that unsettles them the most. Because genuine feelings require honesty. Not honesty with someone else first, honesty with yourself. I feel like this is the stage where they're beginning to admit something very simple, yet incredibly important. You left a deeper impact on them than they ever realized. And the more honest they become about that truth, the more they understand that this story may be far more meaningful than it appeared in the beginning. A door of awareness is slowly opening, not too fast, not dramatically, not with a lot of noise, but enough to make it impossible for them to keep seeing everything the way they once did. A quiet pause begins to settle into this person's energy, not the kind of silence that comes from indifference. This feels more like the silence of someone trying to understand what's happening inside themselves. The Moon card appears here like a path lit only by a soft moonlight. You can still walk forward, but you can't see the entire road ahead. And honestly, that feels very similar to where this person is emotionally. They aren't truly afraid of you. They're afraid of what they feel when they're around you. And that's a very important difference. Because before you came into their life, they were used to things they could control. They were used to keeping everything within safe boundaries, used to showing people only the strongest parts of themselves. The vulnerable pieces were always hidden away. Old wounds were buried beneath work, responsibility, busy schedules, or the calm exterior everyone else seemed to believe. From the outside, they may look like someone who knows exactly what they want. But in those moments when they're completely alone, a lot of old memories still remain. The Nine of Swords card carries the feeling of long nights spent thinking too much. Not because something terrible is happening right now, but because old wounds still have a voice. Moments when they were rejected. Moments when they gave their heart and didn't receive the same honesty in return. Experiences that taught them opening up could be dangerous. Over time, they learned how to protect themselves. They built walls. They learned how to keep people at a distance. They learned how to leave before they could be left behind. They learned how to act as if they didn't need anyone. And here's the thing. Those protective patterns once helped them survive, so they held on to them for a very long time. Long enough that they stopped noticing how many layers of armor they were carrying. The Four of Cups card brings through a very specific feeling. Part of them still hopes for something genuine. Another part immediately questions it. It's like standing in front of an open door and being unable to step through. Not because they don't want to, but because they don't know whether what's waiting on the other side is truly safe. And I feel like this is exactly what you've touched within them, Aquarius. You didn't try to break down those walls. You didn't try to force them to change. You didn't show up trying to prove anything. And somehow, that's what makes this so confusing for them. Because many people throughout their life have asked them to become someone else, to be different, to fit a certain expectation. Your energy feels different. It feels more like a reminder that they can be seen without wearing so many masks. And that's beautiful. But it's also frightening. The Strength card appears here as a very different kind of strength. Not the strength of control. Not the strength of always appearing tough. But the strength required to face the softest, most vulnerable parts of yourself. I think this person is learning that lesson. They're beginning to realize that feeling afraid doesn't make them weak. Acknowledging pain doesn't mean they've failed. Wanting love doesn't make them foolish. And honestly, that's a huge realization. These understandings are arriving slowly, little by little. Like a lake becoming still after a storm. Like a dark room where a thin line of light begins to appear beneath the door. And within that light, they're seeing themselves more clearly than they ever have before. Some things make them proud. Some things make them emotional. Some things reveal just how much fear they've been carrying for far too long. Those fears didn't begin with you. They existed long before you arrived. Your presence simply made it harder for them to keep looking away. A quiet transformation is unfolding inside them. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed, but deep enough to make their hearts start asking questions they never allowed themselves to ask before. Those questions didn't just appear once and disappear, they stayed. They followed this person through the most ordinary moments of life. A quiet morning with a cup of coffee. A familiar road they've driven 100 times before. A song playing somewhere unexpectedly. A random comment from someone else that somehow brings you to mind. The Six of Cups card carries the feeling of memories that seem to have a life of their own. Not loud memories. Not the kind of major moments everyone easily remembers. What stays with them are usually the smallest details. The way you laugh when you're completely at ease. Something you said without even realizing its impact. A thought you shared about life. A perspective that stayed with them long after the conversation was over. And what's interesting is, they didn't consciously try to hold on to those things. They simply stayed. Like a song that suddenly starts playing in your head, even though you haven't heard it in years. You seem to exist in their mind in much the same way, naturally, quietly, but consistently. The Page of Cups card feels like a very gentle part of this person beginning to wake up, a side of them they rarely allow others to see, the part that likes to imagine, the part that still hopes, the part that continues to believe in sincere feelings even after experiencing disappointment. Honestly, I feel like they've had countless conversations with you in their mind. Conversations that never happened in the physical world. Things they wanted to say but never found the right moment for. Questions they wanted to ask. Explanations they wished they could give. Feelings they almost named, only to stop halfway. Sometimes they imagine what life might look like if the two of you simply had more time together. Not in a perfect way. Not like some fairy tale. More in the quiet, everyday moments. A peaceful weekend. A long conversation after a stressful day. Being with someone who understands your silence without needing every feeling explained. And somehow, Those simple images affect them more than anything else, because they come from the most honest place in their heart. The Lover's card appears here as a moment of realization. A realization that the value of a connection goes far beyond attraction or emotion. It lives in harmony, understanding, presence. This person is beginning to understand that what they've always been searching for isn't just chemistry. It isn't just excitement. What they truly long for is the feeling of being completely themselves with someone. And in some way, you seem to bring that feeling out of them. Not through promises, not through pressure, just through who you are. And because of that, they've started looking back at many choices they've made throughout their life. The more they understand their own feelings, the more they realize not everyone leaves the same imprint on your heart. Some people arrive and leave. Some memories slowly fade away. But certain connections continue to grow even when they're not part of your everyday life. The Ten of Cups card brings in such a soft energy. It feels like someone sitting alone, quietly thinking about the future, not some distant future. Just a future close enough for the heart to imagine. And in those moments, you often appear, not as a passing thought, but as part of a picture they're unconsciously creating. What's interesting is that this doesn't make them feel pressured the way it once might have. Instead, it encourages them to sit with their feelings a little longer. Because when someone begins allowing themselves to imagine beautiful possibilities again, it's often a sign that they're starting to trust their heart. And I think that's where this person finds themselves, in a very different place than before. A place where feelings that were pushed aside are finally finding their voice. A place where unspoken truths are slowly rising to the surface. A place where part of them is beginning to wonder whether it's time to stop simply thinking about all of this and start being more honest about what they truly feel. That question is no longer sitting quietly in the back of their mind. It's starting to weave its way into the small decisions they make every day, into the way they see life, into the way they see themselves. The Eight of Cups card comes through with the feeling of someone standing at an emotional crossroads. Part of them knows they can't keep living according to the same familiar patterns. Another part still wants to hold on to the things that once made them feel safe. And that creates a very quiet inner tension, because sometimes change isn't difficult because of what's ahead. Sometimes the hardest part is letting go of what has become familiar. This person has spent a long time building the version of themselves they know today. Their rules, their boundaries, the ways of thinking that helped them avoid getting hurt, the habits that gave them a sense of control. But the more they reflect, the more they realize that not everything familiar still fits the person they're becoming. Some beliefs once helped them survive. Some beliefs are now keeping them from living honestly. The Death card carries the energy of deep transformation, not the kind you immediately see on the outside. This feels more like someone realizing they've outgrown old fears, outgrown old stories, even outgrown some of the limits they once placed on themselves. And honestly, I think that's exactly what this person is moving through. They're looking back at choices they made in the past. Moments when they stayed silent, when they should have spoken. Moments when they walked away when they really wanted to stay. Moments when they acted like they didn't care while their heart was saying something completely different. Not to blame themselves, just to understand. Because real growth often begins with understanding, not judgment, not guilt, just the willingness to look honestly at the truth. The Wheel of Fortune card feels like gears slowly beginning to move. Things that seemed frozen for a very long time are starting to shift. Old perspectives are changing. New realizations are emerging. This person seems to be understanding that life doesn't always unfold according to the plans we make. Some of the most important things arrive when we're least prepared for them. Some of the most important people enter our lives completely unexpectedly. And you seem to represent that realization for them. Not because you tried to change them, but because your presence helped them recognize what they wanted to change within themselves. That's a very different thing. When people change because of pressure, it often feels forced. When change happens because the heart is finally ready, it unfolds much more naturally. The Fool card brings in a really beautiful energy here. It feels like someone standing at the beginning of a road they never imagined they would take. They don't have all the answers. They can't see the entire journey. But for the first time in a long time, curiosity is becoming stronger than fear. For the first time, they're starting to wonder what might happen if they lived more honestly with their feelings. What might happen if they stopped trying to control everything? What might happen if they allowed their heart to have a little more of a voice? And this doesn't feel impulsive at all. Actually, it feels quite the opposite. It feels like the result of countless reflections, countless experiences, and many important lessons learned along the way. I feel like this person is moving closer to the most authentic version of themselves, a version that no longer wants to chase old expectations, a version that no longer wants fear making every decision, a version that's learning how to trust itself more deeply. And as they move through that process, a truth is becoming clearer and clearer within them, a truth that feels harder to push aside than it once did, a truth that's slowly finding its way to the surface. And honestly, I don't think they can pretend not to see it anymore. That truth is slowly changing the way they see everything around them. The things they once spent so much time chasing don't seem to bring the same sense of fulfillment anymore. Not because those things have lost their value. It's just that their heart has started searching for something different, something deeper, something more real. The Star card comes through again, like a gentle light guiding them toward new realizations. It feels like this person is moving through a chapter of life where they once placed enormous importance on becoming someone, achieving something, or proving their worth to the world. For a long time, they believed that if they became successful enough, strong enough, or independent enough, the feeling of something missing would eventually disappear. But life has a way of revealing the spaces that accomplishments alone cannot fill. And you seem to have entered their life during one of those moments. Not to complete them, not to save them, but to help them recognize what truly matters. And honestly, that's been making them think a lot. Because the more they understand their own feelings, the more they realize that what stays with them isn't the flashy moments. It isn't the impressive achievements, it's the feeling of being heard, the feeling of being understood, the feeling of being seen for who they truly are. The Sun card carries such a warm energy here. It feels like clouds slowly parting after a long stretch of gray skies. Light begins reaching places that have remained hidden in shadow for a very long time. And I think that's what's happening inside this person. They're beginning to look at their life from a simpler perspective, a more honest one, the endless races, the constant pressure to achieve more, the standards they once believed they had to live up to. Those things still exist, but they no longer sit at the center of everything, because they're learning to ask different questions now. Not how much do I have, but how do I actually feel? Not what do people think of me, but what brings my heart a sense of peace? And I feel like Aquarius has unintentionally become a mirror for that process, not through advice, not through grand lessons, simply by being yourself. Authenticity has a unique kind of influence. It quietly encourages others to ask themselves whether they're living honestly too. The Two of Cups card brings in the feeling of genuine alignment, not the kind that comes from being exactly the same, but the kind that happens when two souls understand one another on a deeper level. This person is beginning to realize that what exists between the two isn't built on feelings alone. It's built on respect, trust, presence, and the ability to see something beautiful in one another, even while both people are still imperfect. That realization is becoming more important to them with time, because they've lived enough life to know that attraction can happen quickly. But understanding takes time, and the things that last are often built from the most sincere parts of who we are. The Judgment card carries a powerful moment of awareness. It's like suddenly understanding the meaning of a chapter in your life that never fully made sense before. This person is beginning to see that meeting you affected them more deeply than they once realized, not because of what was said, but because of what changed within them afterward. The way they see love, the way they see happiness, the way they see themselves. Some doors inside their heart have quietly opened. Some old beliefs are being replaced by more mature understandings. And when all of that settles, a very simple feeling remains. It feels like they no longer want to spend all their energy chasing things that only keep them busy. They want to invest more of themselves into what truly matters. The things that make the heart feel alive. The things that bring warmth into life. The things that remind them that sometimes the greatest value isn't found in achieving something. It's found in being honest enough to embrace what the heart may have known for a very long time. What their heart has known for a very long time is slowly becoming something they no longer want to avoid. The energy here feels different now, much different. It no longer feels like a constant battle between moving forward and holding back. It no longer feels like someone trying to analyze every emotion in search of the perfect answer. Instead, it feels like this person is entering a chapter where honesty matters more than always being right. The King of Cups card comes through as the image of someone who has finally learned how to sit with their feelings instead of running from them. And that doesn't mean they're no longer afraid. It simply means they don't want fear making every decision anymore. Honestly, I feel like they've grown tremendously through this journey. Not the kind of growth everyone can see, not the kind that earns recognition from the outside world. This is the kind of growth that happens in private conversations with yourself, in moments of facing uncomfortable truths, in those quiet realizations where you finally admit what your heart has been trying to tell you all along. And what they're gradually admitting is that you mean more to them than they once allowed themselves to acknowledge. That's creating a profound shift within them. Because when someone starts being honest about their feelings, they also start being honest about their desires. And those desires don't revolve around proving something anymore. They don't revolve around winning or being right. They become simpler and somehow much more real. The Ace of Pentacles card feels like a seed being planted in fresh soil. This person is no longer thinking about emotions as something beautiful that only exists in the imagination. They're beginning to think about presence, about what can actually be built, about what can grow when it's nurtured with sincerity, patience, and care. That's why this energy doesn't feel impulsive to me. It feels calm, grounded, very realistic. Like someone who's lived enough life to understand that meaningful things usually take time. And the more they understand that, the more they're drawn toward what offers lasting value rather than temporary feelings. The Four of Wands card brings through a sense of stability they may never have fully allowed themselves to hope for before. And what's interesting is, this stability doesn't seem to be coming from external circumstances. It's coming from within, from feeling more comfortable in their own skin, from no longer needing to hide the most authentic parts of themselves. Because hiding takes a tremendous amount of energy. Keeping distance does too. Living behind layer after layer of protection does too. At some point, people stop craving protection and start craving peace. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. This person wants honest conversations. They want connections that don't require endless guessing. They want to show up as they truly are without constantly looking over their shoulder emotionally. The Ten of Pentacles card carries the energy of long-term vision, not decisions made in a fleeting emotional moment, but an awareness of what is truly worthy of time, heart, and energy. And that's how they're beginning to see life now. What actually matters, what is truly worth holding on to, who genuinely makes life feel more meaningful. Those questions seem to keep leading them in the same direction. And the deeper they go into those answers, the more they realize they don't want to keep living as older versions of themselves. A very simple desire is beginning to take shape, the desire to live more honestly, to say what needs to be said, to express what they truly feel, to stop pretending they don't know what their heart wants. Because sometimes a new beginning doesn't arrive when everything is perfect. It arrives when someone finally finds the courage to open a door they've been standing in front of for a very long time. And honestly, I feel like this person is standing in front of that door now, no longer turning away, no longer pretending it isn't there, just standing quietly before it, with a heart that has changed more than they ever expected, and with a readiness they never imagined they would one day possess. Aquarius, whether this reading resonated deeply with you or only in a small way, I hope you'll hold on to the parts that truly spoke to your heart and gently release anything that doesn't feel like it's yours. Because sometimes the most beautiful thing isn't knowing exactly what's waiting ahead. Sometimes the most beautiful thing is realizing how much you've grown from the person you used to be. And if someone out there is learning how to be more honest with their heart, let that journey unfold in its own time and in its own way. As for you, keep following your own light. Keep trusting your worth. Keep walking the path that brings your soul a sense of peace. Thank you for spending this time with me and sharing your energy in this reading. Honestly, your presence here means more than you probably realize. You are deeply appreciated. And I'm truly grateful that we get to share these moments together. I'll see you again in the next reading. Until then, I hope life brings you moments of peace, moments of love, and meaningful experiences that remind you just how far you've come. Take good care of yourself, Aquarius. And as always, thank you for being here. Bye.